The great hall was silent. Hundreds of beings from across the galaxy sat in their seats waiting. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few glowed with soft light. They all came to hear the truth about the war that happened 70 years ago. The war between the Vraxian Empire and humanity. At the center of the hall stood a platform. On that platform was an old Vraxian warrior named Krelthax. His body was covered in scars. His 6 limbs shook slightly as he walked. Once he had been a proud soldier of the greatest empire in the galaxy. Now he was just an old warrior who could not forget. Ambassador Taemin sat at the high table. He was a human diplomat with gray hair and tired eyes. Next to him sat Commander Jiwoo, a human military officer who wore her uniform with quiet pride. Her face showed no emotion, but her eyes watched Krelthax carefully. Krelthax reached the speaking stone. He placed one hand on it, feeling its cool surface. The room's technology would carry his words to every being present. He took a deep breath. His throat felt dry. "I am Krelthax of the Vraxian Empire," he began. His voice was rough but clear. "I have come to speak about the war. About what we did. About what happened to us." The room remained quiet. Every eye was on him. 70 years ago, the Vraxian Empire was powerful. We had conquered 47 worlds. We were the strongest military force in this sector of space. No one could stop us. No one dared to fight back. He paused, his body shaking slightly. Then we met humanity. Some of the aliens in the crowd whispered to each other. Humans were now known across the galaxy as peaceful diplomats and skilled negotiators. It was hard to imagine them at war. We first learned about humans on their colony world. They called it New Pyongyang. It was a small settlement on the edge of their territory. The planet had good soil and water. About 50,000 humans lived there. They grew food and built homes. They seemed harmless. Krelthax closed his eyes, remembering. The Empire decided to take that world. It should have been easy. We had done it many times before. We sent 3 battle fleets. I was a junior officer on the lead warship. We were excited. We thought this would be a quick victory. He opened his eyes and looked directly at Ambassador Taemin. "We studied your species before we attacked. We read your history. We saw that humans fought wars against each other. You seemed emotional and divided. We thought you were weak. We thought you would surrender quickly when you saw our power." The old warrior's voice became quieter. "We were so very wrong." He continued his story. "Our ships entered the system. Our sensors showed the human colony below. We broadcast our message. It was simple. Surrender or die. We gave them 1 day to decide. The humans did not respond for many hours. We thought they were afraid. We thought they were deciding who would speak for them. Then finally a message came back." Krelthax remembered that moment perfectly. It still gave him chills. A human commander named Dong Hyun appeared on our screens. He was calm, too calm. He looked at us through the video link and said only 7 words. "You have made a grave mistake." Then he ended the transmission. We laughed. All of us on the bridge laughed. How could these small creatures threaten us? We were Vraxians. We were warriors born. They were just humans. The old warrior's hands gripped the speaking stone harder. The next morning, we began landing our troops. I was with the first wave. 3,000 Vraxian soldiers landed on that colony world. We expected to find scared civilians hiding in their homes. We expected crying and begging. Instead, we found empty streets. The civilians were gone. Every human woman, child, and elder had been evacuated during the night. Only soldiers remained. The colony had become a fortress. Krelthax's voice grew stronger as the memories flooded back. The human soldiers did not hide. They waited for us in the open. They had prepared defensive positions all around their settlement. When we advanced, they opened fire. We had better armor. We had stronger weapons. Our bodies were tougher than theirs. But they did not run. They did not panic. They aimed carefully and fired. They worked together like parts of one machine. He looked around the room at all the different species. Other species we conquered would fight for a few days, then surrender when they saw they could not win. We expected humans to do the same. After 3 days of fighting, we had destroyed many of their defensive positions. We had killed many of their soldiers. We sent another message. "Surrender now, and we will spare the rest." Commander Donghyun responded again. This time his message was even shorter. Just 2 words. "Come closer." So we did. We pushed forward. We entered the colony's buildings. We thought we were winning. Krelthax's voice became hollow. That was when we learned our first lesson about humans. They do not fight like warriors. They fight like survivors. The humans had prepared traps everywhere. Buildings would collapse as we entered. Hidden explosives would detonate. They did not fight with honor. They fought to kill us in any way possible. And when we finally took a building, when we thought we had won that position, the humans would take it back during the night. The old warrior's body sagged slightly. We had never fought an enemy like this. Other species would rest at night. Humans kept fighting. Other species would retreat when wounded. Humans would fight harder. Other species would lose hope when their numbers decreased. Humans seemed to gain strength from their losses. After 2 weeks, we had taken only half of the colony. We had lost 800 soldiers. 800 Vraxian warriors dead on that small world. The Empire sent more troops. 5,000 more soldiers arrived. The humans still did not surrender. They still did not run. Commander Donghyun sent one more message. He looked tired. His uniform was dirty and torn, but his eyes were clear and hard. He said, "Every meter of ground costs you. Every building costs you. Every street costs you. How much are you willing to pay?" Krelthax looked at Commander Jiwoo. She was watching him with those same hard eyes. "It took us 3 months to capture that colony." 3 months. We lost over 2,000 soldiers. When we finally captured the last human position, only 37 human soldiers were still alive. 37 out of the original 5,000 who stayed to fight. We took them as prisoners. We thought they would be broken, defeated. Instead, they looked at us with something in their eyes. Not fear, not hate, something worse. They looked at us like they had already won. The room was completely silent now. Krelthax's voice dropped to almost a whisper. We did not understand then, but that look in their eyes was the truth. They had already won, because in 3 months they had taught us to fear them. They had shown us that conquering humanity would cost more than the Empire could afford to pay. That was just one colony, just one small world, and humanity had hundreds of worlds, billions of soldiers. In that moment, standing over the ruins of New Pyongyang, I knew. Krelthax stood quietly for a moment. The memories were heavy. He could feel the weight of them pressing on his chest. The beings in the Great Hall waited for him to continue. He took a breath and went on. After we took New Pyongyang, the Empire thought the war would end quickly. We had won the first battle. We thought this would scare the humans into peace talks. We were wrong again. The old warrior's eyes became distant. Instead of peace, humanity declared total war. Every human colony armed itself. Every human world prepared for invasion, and they sent their own fleets toward our territory. I was promoted after New Pyongyang. My commanders thought I understood how to fight humans. I did not. Nobody did. But they sent me to the next invasion anyway. This time we attacked a mining colony called Busan Station. Krelthax's voice grew rougher. The battle lasted 5 months. 5 months of constant fighting, and that was where I truly learned what made humans different from every other species in the galaxy. He looked around the room. How many of your species need sleep? Most of you need 8 hours, some need more. Vraxians need 6 hours of rest each day. We fight hard, but we also rest hard. This is normal. This is how war works. Humans do not work this way. The old warrior's hands trembled. On Busan Station, we noticed something strange. Human soldiers would fight for 2 days with almost no sleep. Then they would rest for 4 hours and fight for 2 more days. We could not understand it. How were they still functioning? How were they still sharp and focused? Our medical officers studied captured human soldiers. They found something in human biology. Humans can push their bodies far beyond normal limits when they need to. They produce chemicals in their brains that keep them awake and alert. Other species cannot do this safely. If we tried, we would collapse or die. Humans just kept going. Krelthax closed his eyes. But that was not the worst thing we learned on Busan Station. The worst thing was what happened at Medical Station 7. The room seemed to grow colder as he spoke. Medical Station 7 was a human field hospital set up in an old mining tunnel. We surrounded it during a major offensive. Inside were 12 wounded human soldiers and 1 medic. Her name was Corporal Haewon. At the high table, Commander Jiwoo's hands tightened on the armrests. Her face remained calm, but something flickered in her eyes. We had 300 soldiers surrounding that medical station. We called for their surrender. We said we would treat the wounded fairly if they gave up. We waited for an answer. Krelthax's voice became very quiet. Corporal Haewon responded. She said, "My patients cannot be moved. If you want this station, you will have to take it." Then she stopped talking to us. We thought she was being foolish. Brave perhaps, but foolish. We had 300 soldiers. She had 12 wounded fighters and herself. The answer seemed obvious. The old warrior opened his eyes. They looked haunted. We attacked the next morning. The medical station had only 2 entrances. Both were narrow tunnels. We sent soldiers through both tunnels at the same time. The humans had prepared. They had set up defenses at both entrances. The wounded soldiers, some of them barely able to stand, were firing weapons from behind medical equipment. Corporal HFY was treating patients with one hand and firing a weapon with another. We pushed forward. We had better armor and more soldiers. Slowly we gained ground. But the humans made us pay for every meter. They used the narrow tunnels to their advantage. Our numbers meant nothing in those tight spaces. Krelthax's voice shook. After 6 hours, we broke through the first tunnel entrance. We thought it was over, but inside the medical station we found something we did not expect. The wounded human soldiers had attached explosives to themselves. When we came close, they would detonate. They would die to take a few of us with them. This was not warfare as we knew it. This was something else, something we had no name for. The old warrior looked at his hands. They were still scarred from that battle. Corporal HFY had no more ammunition after the first day, but she did not surrender. She used medical tools as weapons, scalpels, surgical lasers, anything she could find. Her wounded patients did the same. It took us 3 days to fully secure that medical station, 3 days to defeat 13 humans. When it was over, we had lost 47 soldiers, 47 Vraxian warriors killed by wounded humans and 1 medic. The silence in the hall was absolute. Only 2 of us who entered that station survived. I was one of them. When we finally reached the center of the station, we found Corporal HFY. She was wounded in 7 places. She had no weapons left, but she was still standing, still guarding her last 2 patients. Krelthax's voice broke. She looked at us and I saw no fear in her eyes. Only determination. She said something to us. I did not understand the human language well then, but I learned later what she said. "You will never make us surrender. You will never make us stop. We will fight until we cannot breathe." Then she collapsed. She died 30 seconds later. Her last 2 patients were already dead. They had died from their wounds during the night. But she kept fighting anyway to protect them even after death. The old warrior looked up at Commander Jiwoo. After that battle, everything changed for us. We had defeated the humans at Medical Station 7. We had taken the position, but every soldier who survived that fight was different. We were afraid. Not afraid of human weapons, not afraid of human ships or technology. We were afraid of their will. We were afraid of what they would do to win. We were afraid because we knew that if humans could fight like this when wounded and dying, what would they do when they were healthy and strong? Krelthax continued. Word of Medical Station 7 spread through our military. Other battles were happening across many worlds. And we heard similar stories from every front. Humans who fought with broken bones. Humans who continued firing weapons while bleeding to death. Humans who sacrificed themselves to save their fellow soldiers. Our commanders told us that humans were irrational. They said humans did not know when to quit. But we soldiers understood the truth. Humans knew exactly what they were doing. They were showing us the cost. Every battle, every station, every piece of ground would cost us more than we could afford. The old warrior's voice grew stronger. After Busan Station fell, the Empire controlled the mining colony. But we had lost 3,000 soldiers to take it. The humans had 1,000 defenders. We lost 3 soldiers for every one of theirs, and they were just a mining colony, not even a military world. The Empire's generals looked at these numbers. They calculated how many soldiers it would take to conquer all human worlds. The number was impossible. We did not have enough soldiers. We could not breed more fast enough. The mathematics were clear. Even if we won every battle, humanity would bleed us until we had nothing left. Krelthax looked around the room at all the different species. That was when we truly understood what we were fighting. We were not fighting an army. We were not fighting a government. We were fighting an entire species that had decided to survive. And there is nothing in the universe more dangerous than a species that refuses to die. Ambassador Taemin finally spoke. His voice was gentle but firm. Corporal HFY was my sister. The room seemed to stop breathing. Krelthax stared at the human ambassador, his eyes wide. Taemin continued. She was 23 years old when she died at Medical Station 7. She wrote letters to our family every week. In her last letter, she said she was not afraid not. Krelthax felt the weight of Ambassador Taemin's words. He had killed the brother of the man sitting before him. Or his soldiers had. It was the same thing. He wanted to say something, to apologize, but he knew words would not be enough. So he continued his testimony. It was all he could do. 1 year into the war, everything changed again. The fighting moved from ground battles to space. The Empire decided to strike at human homeworlds. We thought if we threatened their core planets, they would have to negotiate. The old warrior's voice was steady now, but sad. I was transferred to fleet operations. I served on the warship Eternal Victory. We were part of the largest Vraxian battle fleet ever assembled, 200 warships all heading toward human space. We expected to fight human defense fleets. We expected big space battles. We were ready for that. What we were not ready for was how fast humans could adapt. Krelthax looked up at the ceiling of the Great Hall. In the first year of the war, human ships were weaker than ours. Their weapons did less damage. Their armor was thinner. Their shields were not as strong. But every month their ships got better. Every battle they learned from us. At first we thought this was normal military improvement. All species try to build better weapons during war. But humans were different. They were not just building better ships. They were studying us, learning us, understanding us. The old warrior's eyes focused on Commander Jiwoo. There was a human frigate captain named Bo-Ra. She commanded a ship called the Bright Star. It was a small ship, maybe 1/10 the size of our dreadnoughts. She should have been no threat to us. But Captain Bo-Ra did something we never expected. She studied how Vraxian commanders think. She read our military history. She learned our tactics, and then she used our own strategies against us. Krelthax's voice held a note of respect. The Battle of Hansel Nebula. That is where I first saw Captain Bo-Ra's work. Our fleet was chasing a group of human ships. They fled into a nebula, a huge cloud of gas and radiation. Our sensors could not see well in the nebula, but we did not care. We had more ships. We had more firepower. We followed them in. Captain Bo-Ra was waiting, but she did not attack us directly. Instead, she used the nebula's radiation to confuse our sensors. Our ships could not tell the difference between real targets and false readings. We started firing at shadows. While we were confused, a small team of human soldiers did something insane. They launched boarding pods toward our largest dreadnought. The pods were small and hard to detect in the nebula. Before we knew what was happening, humans were inside our flagship. The old warrior shook his head slowly. We thought they would sabotage the ship, plant explosives, destroy our command center. That is what any normal military force would do. But humans did not do the normal thing. They captured the dreadnought, all of it. Several aliens in the audience made sounds of surprise. It seemed impossible, Krelthax continued. The boarding team was led by a pilot named Lieutenant Jae-sung. He and his soldiers moved through the ship like they had practiced it 1,000 times. They knew exactly where to go. They had studied the layout of our dreadnoughts. They knew where the command bridge was, where the engine room was, where our soldiers would be. They used gas weapons to make our crew unconscious. They sealed off sections of the ship. Within 2 hours, they had control of the entire dreadnought. 2 hours. It should have been impossible. The old warrior's voice grew quieter. Then they did something even more shocking. They flew the dreadnought out of the nebula, with our entire crew still on board as prisoners. They took our largest warship and brought it back to human space. Captain Bo-Ra's frigate escorted it the whole way. When our fleet tried to follow, she used the nebula to destroy 3 of our cruisers. One small frigate defeated 3 cruisers because she understood how to use the terrain, how to use our own tactics against us. Krelthax looked at Ambassador Taemin. Within 3 weeks, we saw human ships that looked like our dreadnoughts. They had copied the design, but they made it better. They improved our weapons. They strengthened our shields. They took our best technology and made it superior. This happened again and again. Humans would capture our ships, study them, and then build better versions. Every time we developed a new weapon, humans would find a way to counter it within months. Every time we changed our tactics, humans would adapt faster than we could plan. The old warrior's body sagged slightly. Our military leaders started to panic. We had always been the superior force. We had always had the best technology. Now humans were matching us, and they were doing it faster than seemed possible. I asked a human prisoner once after the war. I asked him how they adapted so fast. He said something I will never forget. He said, "When your species is about to die, you learn very quickly." Krelthax's voice became hollow. That was when we understood. Humans were not fighting to win territory. They were not fighting for resources or glory. They were fighting to exist. Their entire species, all of humanity, had decided that extinction was not an option. Every human, from children to elders, from soldiers to scientists, was working toward one goal: survival. There is a human word I learned during the war: desperation. It means acting with urgent need because there is no other choice. Humans fought with desperation. We fought with duty. Desperation is stronger than duty, always. The old warrior looked around the room. By the second year of the war, we were no longer advancing. We held the territory we had taken, but we could not push further. Human fleets were attacking our supply lines. Human special forces were sabotaging our shipyards. Human intelligence agents were infiltrating our command structure. And the worst part was that humans were getting better at fighting us faster than we were getting better at fighting them. The war was turning. We could feel it. Krelthax's voice grew stronger. There was a meeting of our high command. I was there because I had survived more battles against humans than most officers. Our Supreme Admiral Vrexnel asked us a question. He said, "Can we defeat humanity?" The room was silent. Finally, our chief strategist spoke. He said, "We can win battles. We can destroy their fleets. We can take their worlds. But we cannot kill them faster than they can adapt. Every day this war continues, they become stronger and we become weaker. Eventually, they will surpass us completely." Admiral Vrexnel asked, "How long do we have?" The strategist answered, "Perhaps 2 years. Maybe less. The mathematics are clear. If this war continues, humanity will not just defeat us. They will become the dominant power in this entire sector of space." The old warrior's voice dropped to almost a whisper. That was the moment the Vraxian Empire realized we had made a terrible mistake. We had started a war with a species that could not afford to lose. And when a species cannot afford to lose, they will do anything, learn anything, become anything necessary to survive. Krelthax looked directly at Commander Jiwoo. "Your people were not warriors when this war started. You were explorers, farmers, builders. But when we threatened your existence, you became something else. You became perfect survivors. You studied your enemy completely. You learned faster than thought possible. You adapted to every challenge we gave you. And that," the old warrior said, his voice filled with a mixture of fear and respect, "is what makes humanity terrifying. You are not dangerous because you are naturally violent. You are dangerous because you can become whatever you need to be. When you needed to be warriors, you became the best warriors we had ever faced." The hall was completely silent. Every being present understood what Krelthax was saying. Humanity was not just another species. Krelthax took a long breath. The next part of his testimony was the hardest. It was personal. It was painful, but it needed to be told. The beings in the Great Hall waited patiently. They could sense this was difficult for the old warrior. 3 years into the war, the Empire made another decision. We could not defeat humanity in open battle. So we tried a different approach. Occupation. We would take human colony worlds and hold them. We would control the population. We would force humans to surrender by taking their homes. The old warrior's voice was heavy with regret. This was the worst mistake we ever made. I was assigned to occupation duty on a human colony called Sejong. It was a beautiful world. Green forests, clean rivers. About 3 million humans lived there. We invaded with 20,000 soldiers. The human defense force fought hard, but we had superior numbers. After 2 months, we controlled all the major cities. Krelthax's eyes became distant. We thought the hard part was over. We thought once we controlled the cities, the humans would accept their situation. Other species did this. When we occupied their worlds, they would be angry, but they would survive. They would wait for liberation or negotiate for better treatment. Humans did not do this. The old warrior's voice grew quieter. At first, everything seemed normal. The humans went to work. They followed our rules. They seemed to accept the occupation. Our commanders were pleased. They thought humans were finally being reasonable. Then our soldiers started disappearing. Krelthax looked around the room. It started small. A guard would not report for duty. We would search for him and find nothing. No body, no trace. Just gone. We thought maybe he had an accident or got lost. But it kept happening. 1 soldier every few days. Then 1 soldier every day. Then multiple soldiers. They would be on patrol at night and simply vanish. We increased security. We made soldiers travel in groups. It did not matter. They still disappeared. The old warrior's hands trembled. After 3 weeks, we found the first body. It was in a recycling facility. The soldier had been killed quietly. No weapons fired. No alarms triggered. Just dead. We realized then that we were facing human resistance. But this was unlike any resistance we had seen before. The humans were not attacking our bases. They were not fighting in the open. They were hunting us, individual by individual. Krelthax's voice became hollow. The resistance was led by a human named Yun-Su. We learned his name later. He was a teacher before the war, not a soldier, just a normal human who taught children. But when we occupied his world, he became something else. Yun-Su had studied us. He watched our patrols. He learned our schedules. He memorized which soldiers went where and when. He knew our habits better than we knew them ourselves. The old warrior closed his eyes. His resistance cell would strike at night. They knew when our guards changed shifts. They knew which soldiers were tired and less alert. They knew everything about us. And they used this knowledge perfectly. But the worst part was not the attacks. The worst part was the messages they left. Krelthax opened his eyes. They looked haunted. After the first month of resistance, we started finding pictures. Photographs of our homeworlds. Images of Vraxian cities and families. These pictures would be left where our soldiers disappeared. At first, we did not understand what they meant. Then we received a message. It was from Hyun-Su. He spoke to us in perfect Vraxian language. He said, "We know where you come from. We know your families. We know your homes. We could strike at them, but we choose not to. Leave our world and your families stay safe." The old warrior's voice shook. This was psychological warfare at its deepest level. Humans were not just fighting us on Sejong. They were threatening what we loved most. Our families. Our homes. The very things we were trying to protect by conquering others. But they were not making empty threats. They proved they had this capability. They showed us pictures of specific Vraxian officers' families. They named our children. They described our neighborhoods. The intelligence gathering was perfect, complete. Krelthax looked at Ambassador Taemin. How did they do this? How did a resistance group on an occupied colony world get information about Vraxian home planets? We had destroyed all communication equipment. We controlled all networks. It should have been impossible. We learned later that humans had hidden communication systems we never found. They were still connected to the rest of humanity. They were sharing intelligence, working together across light years of distance. Even when occupied, they were part of something larger. The old warrior's voice dropped. My brother Vexathak was also stationed on Sejong. He led a strike team trying to capture the resistance leaders. One night, his team tracked a group of humans to an old factory. They went in prepared for a fight. Instead, they found a trap. But not the kind of trap we expected. The humans gassed the building. My brother and his team fell unconscious. When they woke up, they were tied up but unharmed. Not a single injury. Krelthax's voice became pained. A human woman was there. Her name was Sergeant Minji. She was part of Hyun-Su's resistance cell. She looked at my brother and his soldiers. Then she did something we never anticipated. She released them, all of them, completely unharmed. Several aliens in the audience made sounds of confusion. Why would resistance fighters release enemy soldiers? The old warrior continued. But before releasing them, Sergeant Minji gave my brother a message. She handed him a data tablet. On it were pictures of our family home. Pictures of our mother. Pictures of my children. Detailed information about where we lived, what we did, who we loved. Then she said something that broke my brother's spirit. She said, "We know everything about you. We could hurt your families easily, but we choose not to. We are not monsters. We are humans defending our home. You have a choice. Continue this war and eventually your families may suffer, or go home and this ends." Krelthax's voice cracked. The mercy was worse than any torture could have been. My brother returned to our base. He reported everything. Our commanders ordered him to rest and recover, but he could not. He could not sleep. He could not eat. The look in Sergeant Minji's eyes haunted him. 3 days later, my brother took his own life. The silence in the hall was absolute. The weight of those words pressed down on everyone present. He left a message for me. He said he could not bear what he saw in that human woman's eyes. It was not hatred. It was not anger. It was pity. She pitied us. We had invaded their world. killed their people, occupied their homes, and they pitied us. Krelthax looked up, tears running down his face. Few in the room knew that Vraxians could cry. That pity was more devastating than any weapon. It meant that humans understood us completely. They knew why we fought. They knew what we feared. They knew what we loved. They had studied us so thoroughly that they could predict our actions and our thoughts, and they chose to be merciful. Not because they were weak, but because they were strong enough to make that choice. They had the power to hurt us deeply, and they chose not to use it. That level of strategic thinking, combined with emotional control, was beyond anything we had ever encountered. The old warrior's voice steadied slightly. After my brother's death, I requested transfer off Sejong. I could not stay on that world anymore. But before I left, I met with other officers who had served in occupation duty on different human worlds. Every single one told similar stories. Humans who showed mercy when they could have shown cruelty. Humans who demonstrated they had complete intelligence about Vraxian families and worlds, but chose not to use it. Humans who fought with controlled precision rather than emotional rage. Krelthax looked directly at Commander Jiwoo. Your people did not just fight us. You defeated us psychologically. You showed us that you were not only capable of matching us in combat, but that you were also capable of understanding us better than we understood ourselves. You studied our culture. You learned our language perfectly. You knew our psychology and used it against us. But most terrifying of all, you showed restraint. You showed mercy. You proved that your violence was not uncontrolled rage, but calculated strategy. The old warrior's voice filled with a mixture of fear and respect. That is when I truly understood what we were fighting. We were not fighting an enemy. We were fighting a mirror. Humans showed us what we could have been if we had chosen differently. You showed us that strength does not require cruelty, that victory does not require vengeance. And that, Krelthax said quietly, was the most terrifying lesson of all. Krelthax stood silently for a moment. He was near the end of his testimony. The hardest memories had been shared. Now came the part that still confused him, even after 70 years. The part that changed everything. 4 years into the war, the Vraxian Empire was losing, not quickly but steadily. Human fleets were pushing into our territory. Our colonies were under attack. Our shipyards were being destroyed. The mathematics were clear. Within 2 more years, humanity would be at our homeworld. The old warrior's voice was calm now, almost peaceful. Our high command gathered for an emergency meeting. I was there because I had survived longer than most field officers. The Supreme Admiral asked us all one question. Do we fight until the end or do we surrender? The room was divided. Some officers wanted to fight. They said surrender would dishonor our ancestors. They said we were Vraxian warriors and should die as warriors. Others said surrender was the only way to save our species. Krelthax looked around the great hall. Before we could decide, we received a message. A human message. It requested a meeting, not a surrender demand, not a threat, just a request to talk. We thought it was a trick. Why would humans offer talks when they were winning? Every other species we had conquered would have pressed their advantage. They would have destroyed us completely. We did not understand why humans were different. The old warrior's voice held a note of wonder. The Supreme Admiral decided to send a delegation to meet the humans. I was part of that delegation. We traveled to a neutral space station at the border between our territories. We expected to meet military commanders. We expected demands and conditions. Instead, we met an old human man named Kyung-soo. He was not a soldier. He was a diplomat, a statesman. He came alone except for 2 assistants. No weapons, no guards. Just an old man with data tablets. Krelthax's eyes focused on Ambassador Taemin. Kyung-soo looked like you, Ambassador. Same calm eyes, same gentle voice, but we could sense the strength beneath. This was not a weak human. This was someone who understood power completely. He greeted us politely. He offered us refreshments. He treated us with respect. We did not understand. We had killed millions of humans. We had destroyed their colonies. We had occupied their worlds. Why was he being kind to us? The old warrior continued. Then Kyung-soo placed a data tablet on the table. He said, I want to show you something. On the tablet was a complete military analysis. It showed the current war situation. It showed human fleet positions. It showed projected battle outcomes. It showed everything. The analysis proved that humanity could destroy our homeworld within 6 months. They had the ships. They had the weapons. They had the strategic position. The data was clear and undeniable. We were defeated. We just had not officially surrendered yet. Krelthax's voice grew softer. We waited for the demands. We waited for Kyung-Soo to tell us the terms of our surrender. Instead, he placed another tablet on the table. He said, "This is what we propose instead." On the second tablet were plans. Reconstruction plans for damaged Vraxian colonies, trade agreements between human and Vraxian worlds, cultural exchange programs, education initiatives, medical cooperation, scientific partnerships. The old warrior shook his head slowly. We did not understand. We thought it was another trick. Our senior delegate said, "You can destroy us. Why are you offering peace?" Kyung-Soo's answer changed everything. He said, "Because destroying you would be easy. Building peace is hard. We choose hard things when they are right." Krelthax's voice filled with emotion. That statement made no sense to us. Every species we had conquered would have chosen revenge. They would have made us suffer as we made them suffer. That is how war works. That is how the universe works, Barakur. But Kyung-Soo said something else. He said, "You started this war because you thought we were weak. You thought compassion was weakness. You thought diplomacy was weakness. Let me show you the truth. Compassion is strength. The ability to destroy an enemy but choose not to is the ultimate power. We have that power. We choose peace." The old warrior looked at his scarred hands. He opened a third tablet. On it were detailed psychological profiles of every member of our delegation. Not just military records. Personal information. Our families. Our fears. Our hopes. Our dreams. Humans had studied us completely. They knew us better than we knew ourselves. Kyung-Soo said, "We know that Vraxian culture values strength. We know that surrender feels like dishonor. So we offer you this, not surrender, partnership. We do not want to rule you. We want to live alongside you, as neighbors." As equals. Krelthax's voice trembled. That was the moment I understood. This was not mercy born of weakness. This was strategic thinking at the highest level. Humans had calculated that peace was more valuable than conquest. They had decided that a living neighbor was better than a dead enemy. But it was more than just strategy. It was also genuine compassion. Kyung-Soo looked at us and said, "I have lost family in this war. Most humans have. We are angry. We are hurt. But we are also tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of death. We want this to end. Not with more killing, but with understanding." The old warrior's voice grew stronger. Our delegation returned to the high command. We reported everything. The debate lasted 3 days. Finally, the Supreme Admiral made the decision. We would accept the human offer. Not because we were afraid, though we were, but because we recognized wisdom when we saw it. The peace treaty was signed 2 months later. The Vraxian Empire agreed to release all occupied human worlds. We agreed to pay reparations. We agreed to open our borders to human observers. In return, humans would help us rebuild. They would share technology. They would establish trade routes. Krelthax looked around the Great Hall at all the different species. That was 70 years ago. Since then, the Vraxian people have changed. We learned from humanity. We learned that strength does not mean conquest. We learned that power means having the ability to choose peace. Today, Vraxian and human children attend the same schools. Our scientists work together on research stations. Our merchants trade freely. We are not enemies anymore. We are neighbors. And sometimes we are even friends. The old warrior's voice became quiet but firm. I came here today to give this testimony for several reasons. First, to confess the war crimes committed by the Vraxian Empire. We invaded peaceful worlds. We killed innocent beings. We caused suffering. This must be remembered and never repeated. Second, to honor the humans who fought against us. They were brave. They were determined. They showed us what true strength means. Warriors like Commander Dong Hyun, who defended New Pyongyang. Medics like Corporal Hae-won, who died protecting her patients. Resistance leaders like Hyun-soo, who fought with intelligence and restraint. All of them deserved better than to face our invasion. Krelthax looked directly at Ambassador Tae-min, but the third reason is the most important. I came to warn the galaxy about humanity, not because they are dangerous, because they are powerful in ways other species do not understand. Humans are not the strongest species. They are not the fastest. They are not the smartest. But they have something that makes them unique. They can adapt. They can survive. They can become whatever they need to be. When they need to be warriors, they become perfect warriors. When they need to be diplomats, they become wise negotiators. When they need to be merciful, they show compassion that seems impossible. The old warrior's voice filled the hall, and that is what makes humanity terrifying. Not their weapons, not their ships, not their technology, their ability to choose. They could have destroyed us. They chose not to. They had the power to take revenge. They chose peace instead. That level of self-control, combined with their adaptability, makes them the most powerful species I have ever encountered. Krelthax turned to face Commander Jiwoo. "Do you still fear us?" she asked quietly. The old warrior nodded. "Every day. But I also trust you. And that is the strangest thing of all. I fear humanity because I know what you are capable of. But I trust humanity because you have proven you will choose the right path, even when it is difficult." Commander Jiwoo stood up. She walked slowly toward the testimony platform. The room watched in silence. She stopped in front of Krelthax. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. An old alien warrior and a human officer, former enemies, survivors of the same terrible war. "My mother died in the initial invasion of New Pyongyang," Jiwoo said quietly. "My father died defending a supply depot during the second year. I have every reason to hate your species." Krelthax lowered his head. "I understand. But I do not hate you," Jiwoo continued. "I hate what happened. I hate the war. I hate the loss. But you came here today and told the truth. You faced your past. That takes more courage than any battle." She extended her hand. "Thank you for your testimony." Krelthax stared at the offered hand. In human culture, this was a sign of peace, of agreement, of respect. Slowly, he reached out with one of his 6 limbs and grasped her hand.